Okay, so Maria and Tommy and I are going to talk about different aspects of IO5, which is called Architectural Voices. And if you can go to the next slide, Maria. The structure of the talk is that we will each talk about three areas of progress that we've made during the first year, the first iteration. Then there'll be a discussion in breakout rooms, as there has been earlier on. And there is a Google Doc for somebody in each group to write down what you talk about. It might be interesting to try using one person as a scribe, because we haven't done that today, and it might facilitate more interaction that way in those breakout rooms. And then we'll come back for a short general discussion at the end. Okay. Next slide, please, Maria. So the IO5 in the badge project, I've sort of passive aggressively put the D in bold there to flag up the digital nature, which is really a thoroughgoing consideration for our IO. So badge overall is supposed to be developing digital global competence for engineering students, and our IO is specifically related to student-produced multimodal teaching and learning resources for architecture and civil engineering students, and those will be made available through the badge platform. So in the first year, we've really taken a design thinking approach by accident, I think. I was listening to the design thinking talk, and my question that I kept coming back to was, what is new about this? What's different about this? And I realized the reason it seems so familiar is because we've actually been doing it. We've been starting with this empathize consideration of what does it feel like to be a student, what are students doing. We didn't call it that, but that has been key in what we've been doing. And we've been talking about the way we've done that is by just jumping straight in and trying to develop our project as we do it. So we started some co-teaching, which we'll talk about. Presently, we've been doing some research by gathering data from students and from teachers and from people in industry. And we've also been reflecting on our own work and trying to capture that process. So there's two courses, one at Pavia and one at Alta, where more than one of us has been present. So Maria will talk about that. Tommy is going to talk about the market research, as it were, the part two, and then I'll talk about some of the reflections that we had at the end. So over to you, Maria, to talk about the co-teaching.
Okay, so like John said, we've tried co-teaching using video conferencing during the pandemic. The contexts were quite different, and the reason why we tried co-teaching was also because we wanted to get an understanding of the different contexts in which we're teaching. If ultimately we are to develop resources for teachers and for learning, students produced resources, we needed more understanding of the context in which, in fact, we're teaching. And the first one is John and Tommy participating in my students' presentations, their final project, architecture projects presentations. These students have been attending architectural engineering students who also have been attending the course titled Writing in English for Architects with me. And the other context was that at Aalto University, where industrial design students were presenting the case studies after attending Tommy's course titled Integrated Oral Skills. So we have a list of field observations based on these participation, and the contexts are different, but some of the observations are common. I put them on this slide. So for example, all students need to improve their oral communication and presentation skills in English as lingua franca context and digital context. Therefore, they also have to work on pronunciation that is intelligible in an English as lingua franca context, that is acceptable, doesn't jeopardize mutual understanding in this kind of global context. They also have to learn some kind of standardized technical vocabulary, again, that should be acceptable in this ELF context. And all of the students, whether they are industrial design students or architectural engineering students, also need to integrate verbal and visual information and to be able to transition from written to spoken communication, because most of these design project presentations are actually scripted, so they can prepare a written version of that and then prepare the oral presentation based on this written input. So we try to prepare a video, a short brief video of some of this collaborative teaching. And I'm going to launch this video. I should say that I've had issues with synchronizing images and audio. So just to give you a taste of something that we've been doing.
I know my English is not too good. Actually, I can't speak very well in English.
I started to talk in English 2 months ago after 5 years that I talk only Italian.
Maybe this course also helped me to manage with the technical communication, technical terms. So I think it's been useful for me and for my colleagues as well.
I think that this course is very useful.
You have to learn how to talk about architecture, how to write about architecture, you know, technical vocabulary, signposting language, meta language. It was a lot, and it was challenging, but I'm glad you're happy with that as well.
Very different, two things that are very different between Italian and English. One is the melody of it, the overall melody, and the kind of way that things are connected. And English, you probably can hear immediately, it's like stop, start, go, stop. It's very jerky. It's like driving badly, you know, whereas Italian is smooth.
English as a lingua franca, it means that we have more second language speakers of English in the world than first language speakers. John here is, I think, in the minority in this case.
Off you go.
Okay, so good morning everyone. I'm Teresa Romeo and I'm going to present a project carried out during my architecture studies.
Good morning, I'm Angela there, and the project that I'm going to show you is called The Box in the Box.
Okay, then we continue with our next presentation, Luca.
The idea of the tea house starts from the necessity of putting a little building in the highland territories of Liguria.
This project has been developed for Ponente Ligure cycling path and all the related itineraries in the info.
The project that I'm talking about is called International Room to the Living and Beyond, and it was designed by me and a colleague of mine, Sara Giovanelli, in 2017.
A course of Architettura e Composizione Architettonica 3, Architectural Composition 3.
It's just useful. You explain the academic context. This is part of this course. This is why this talk exists as a thing, you know. That's handy for the listeners.
When you present to an audience, of course, the first consideration you have to have before you start, you know, constructing a presentation is think about the audience. Who is the audience? Are they other students of architecture? Do they want to know about the technical aspects of the thing? At least that's the theory. But yeah, I enjoyed it very much as well. Thank you very much.
I think I can stop the video here, so it's a bit longer, but just to give you a taste of the kind of context we are working with and what we've been doing with the students, and especially to try and prompt your reflection in the breakout rooms on some of these points. So what is the kind of communicative competence, global digital competence that we need to develop in order to help students do what they need to do in their professions? For example, describe a design project or design process as well. And that, I think, is over to you, Tommy, to describe the research stage.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Right, I'm sending links in the chat again to the very surveys mentioned there in the slide, I hope to goodness they work, those links. What we did basically is 2 questionnaires, one for professionals, that means architects and lecturers or people doing both jobs, which is surprisingly many people, at least in Aalto. And then a kind of student needs or skills survey that we need to basically pretty much sort of fine tune our approach again. So the links are there. We've tried these out. Thanks, Maria. We've tried these out, at least the professional thing, before the epidemic hit. And we have a couple of interviews, but we can call them a kind of pilot study stuff. So we need more data from this, and we are working on it as we speak. Some of our assumptions were confirmed by the keynote speaker this morning, which was interesting to find out. One of the specific things for architects, I would say, is that at least the person I interviewed, or my friends, was, they said that you need, in addition to this kind of regular language skills that where you, well, basically are able to function in a team and talk to people and interact, you need words for describing designs and things like that. So there's a couple of very specific things to architects I think we're going to discover once we get enough data and have the time to analyze it. And like I said, the needs analysis, the student survey would be something that we use to fine tune our materials, our teaching materials. And that's about it for me. The links are there, and we'll hopefully have some discussion about the questions there if you find them worthy of comment during the discussion. Okay, that's in brief what I have to say about the research section.
Okay, so that's the digital co-teaching from Maria, the research part from Tommy, and then finally we've got this other aspect, which is reflecting on and capturing our process. And so this is partly been intensified by the shift to digital work due to the COVID situation, but this was always a digital project. So during these kind of co-teaching events, when we've suddenly had to improvise a lot of online working practices and negotiate online working practices, that's become a resource. You know, yes, it's stressful. Yes, we're all presenting from our home, and we've got personal and professional things coming into conflict, and all the things that have been discussed today. But this is actually a crash course in how to do things online as well. So provided we give our students a sympathetic way through that, it can be a really positive learning experience. And so that to me felt like a kind of eureka moment. You know, it's like, oh, wow, it's an epiphany. This is an important transformation in professional practice happening. And so part of that, then how do we capture that, and how do we embed that realization and that kind of empathy into the resources we produce? Yes, it's explicitly mentioned in the design thinking schema that we heard about, but what does it look like during the planning process, for example? So that's one reason why we recorded some aspect of our meeting, and we've got a short clip to play in a minute of one of our meetings. And then the other reason to record that, apart from being able to reflect on our work and make that reflection explicit and document it, it's a way of showing other people in other IOs within the badge project how we're working, how we're thinking. Could that be a way that we share practice with each other in a 1 minute summary? So we have an hour's meeting where we talk about lots of things, and then we quickly do a 1 minute rehash of it to get the main points down. And then that can be shared as a clip. I don't know if that's a useful way of sharing the feeling of that conversation. I think it can maybe do things that writing can't do, perhaps. So when you watch that and when you discuss it in breakout rooms, think about whether that could be a useful way for you to document what you do and share your practice? Can it help us align what we're doing across the different IOs so that we produce something that has a unified feel? And it's also a way of contextualizing the resources we produce. You know, if you give somebody a load of resources, they might think, well, there's lots of different ways to go and to make this work, especially if you tell them the first stage in the process is empathize or something. You know, if design thinking, say, is new to somebody, or if an emphasis on the emotionality of interaction is not everybody's cup of tea or not everyone's natural way of approaching things, it can feel quite alienating and weird, and you might need to see, well, what does that really look like? So we've tried to kind of capture it by this this means as well. So that's the two things that I think a little video can do. It can capture how we work and make a large project more harmonious, i.e. more similar in its approach and more unified in its approach. But it can also give people using the resources a quick insight into the intention of what we're doing. So that's the GELS LOL video that we'll see in a minute. And we've also got one from our team leader in the English team at Aalto University, Maurice, who is working on a project called ARES, which is a way of integrating the digital resources we produce so that students and teachers can use them. So let's watch the first clip.
ARES is a geolocative platform which allows actually teachers or actually any user to actually create games or tours or actually many different options that can be played actually around a space. The acronym actually stands for Augmented Reality for Interactive Storytelling. And in this case, it's actually kind of an ideal platform to be used in this sense. So when actually Tommy and John mentioned that they were going to be thinking of doing an architectural tour, it was a no-brainer. This seemed actually like a very ideal usage for ARES. So you can actually plot points on the map with the online editor, and then the game can actually be played online with the mobile app. So basically you can create an architectural tour. And actually at this point, the only thing missing was the architecture students and the designers for the game. We would have done this over the summer, but alas, with the COVID-19 situation, we weren't allowed to hire anybody for the present moment. But this is actually what we're expecting to do this fall.
Before you move on, Maria, yeah, so the drawback with the ARES at the moment is no students and no resources to put onto this platform, but now we also don't have a platform. ARES has stopped working, but we want something like that. So we're looking for a way to integrate resources produced by students, and they could be podcasts, they could be video clips, or they could be other materials that students produce, and then they will be able to use them in a platform where they can move around it either virtually or actually linked to a physical location, like a culturally significant building that they might walk around and then activate clips as they go around. And then the last one, Maria.
Now it's easier to make the case that the time spent on making the interpersonal relationships work is not wasted time. The small talk stuff and getting to know each other and explaining who you are to your neighbour, the sort of stuff that can, in a time-pressured classroom, feel like we can just do that quickly and then get to the real thing, which is the imparting of knowledge, or even the student construction of knowledge. But the interpersonal stuff is core now. That's the shift in perspective that this has given me.
Yeah, and that links to the professional language stuff that we teach as well, because one of the things you seem to hear a lot and read a lot is that sort of basic level of communication is the thing that, let's say, an engineer needs, and thinks is perhaps sometimes even more valuable than having the exact professional vocabulary, because you can pick that up on the job. But actually being able to connect with people with a shared language is very, very important in the working capacity, and also, like you were saying, John, just being a person in a group situation. And that's the thing that kind of, I see that people value a lot. And not because it's all, but only because it's sort of nice and warm and fuzzy stuff, but it's this thing that kind of keeps social situations together, and everything gels in those situations. And you get to work.
I think gels is a nice word that we should use.
Indeed. So then we move on to the last part. This is where we're going to go into breakout rooms for just under 15 minutes. There is a web, if you scroll through the slide, Maria, there should be, so the 3 areas we'd like you to talk about, and we want just open-ended responses to the things that we've brought up here. There's a lot of stuff, and it's got a kind of summative dimension to many topics raised in the day. But in particular, what do you think about co-teaching, video conferencing for shared classroom spaces online, with an emphasis on the emotional and interpersonal skills there? What do you think about the questions that we've posed within our research questionnaires? And what do you think about reflecting on our own work, even filming it and sharing those capturing that process? Do we need to be that reflexive? Do we need to record it? Is there something of value in that? So those are the areas. Okay, very good. Those are the areas I want you to think about. And if we can be put into groups now, then that would be terrific.